Hello! So I have a new tutorial today. It's going to be the first part of a tutorial series that I'm doing on Quixel. So many of you may have seen the news about Quixel joining forces with Epic, and as a result it's completely free now if you have an Epic license, which give you obviously access to like the Megascans library, which is obviously really exciting and really cool. I've been using Quixel Suite 2 for a while now on Photoshop. It's still good, Photoshop still supports it. There's a couple of error messages that pop up now and again, but we can just normally click through them. So it's still worth sort of showing this stuff if people do have this at home. And also I'm optimistic that the processes pipeline that you follow using Quixel Suite 2 will be sort of translated across to Quixel Mixer, because as a result of Quixel joining forces with Epic, they're going to be turning their standalone software Quixel Mixer into something much more powerful. Basically, it's going to do what Quixel Suite 2 can currently do now, but all in one sort of program. Hopefully the stuff learned in here will be able to be carried across and translated across. And I'm mindful as well that the series that I do will probably, I'll still be sort of recording these videos as the new Quixel Mixer comes out, so I'll feature some videos in there from that as well. But we're already going to be using Quixel Mixer in the series anyway before that happens, just because we can use Quixel Mixer to make some really cool seamless textures for our environment, and we can take advantage of like its power to sort of create procedural textures, and I'll be sort of showing again the pipeline for how we can use that and push that into engines like Unreal. Okay, so that's a very long introduction to the series, but hopefully that will give you an idea about what's coming up, so I will just jump in. In terms of pipeline, we're going to start off with 3 Studio Max, and then we're going to make our way through to Photoshop just after that to create the material ID. Then we'll use Quixel, which is the plugin that we're going to use for Photoshop, and then finally we're going to put that into Unreal. So today I'm just going to keep it real simple, and we're just going to open up 3 Studio Max. So I'll select this window down here, and I'll press Alt-W to full screen. Go into your Create tab and choose Box. Just draw a box in the middle there, and change the parameters to be 50 by 50 by 50. What's up 50 by 50. In fact, no, sorry, we'll go 100 by 100 by 100 to make it a little bigger. Don't worry about the length segments or width or height segments, it's defined, they just stay at 1. So I'll right click to deselect creation of box, and then press W on the keyboard to go into the move tool. Right click on the up and down arrows for all these parts here to center the box at origin point, as we've done so there. Cool. And then we'll go to the modify panel. As you can see, I've got some preset buttons already set up. You can do that yourself if you want to by clicking on this icon here and going to configure modify sets and just dragging in the buttons that you feel you use the most. Alternatively, of course, you can just go up here, type in ED to get to edit poly, but I'm choosing edit poly just from there. So I will select the polygons. Shortcut key is number 4 on the keyboard. Control A to select all faces, and then I'm just going to scroll down and I'm going to find the inset option, so click on the settings next to that, and I'm going to change it to for about 5 centimeters, hit enter, and we need to change it from group to by polygon, sorry, instead. Maybe a little bit bigger than that actually. 10 will be good? Yeah, 10 looking good. Okay, so click tick to confirm that, and that's all fine now. So deselect it and select the edit poly, and then we'll add an unwrap UVW map. Again, we can just search in here by typing in unwrap UVW if you wanted to, or you can click it up here if we set it up as a preset button. So I'll click on Open UV Editor, and at the moment it's obviously showing all the faces. If I press F4 on the keyboard, just so I can see all the edged faces, so we're now in edge faces mode by pressing F4. If I select this, it's taking up the whole space. So obviously I need to ask myself, where are these bits? And that's actually because of the modify that we did to it, where we've used the inset, it's actually pushed it on its side just there, which is no good for us in terms of us wanting to texture this. So what I need to do is press Control A again to select all faces. Unfortunately, there is a preset in here already that helps us with this. Just go down to the projection setting, so sorry, I'm still in the unwrap UVW settings, and then down to projection, and then click on box map. And you can see then that the actual image on here looks very similar to what we've got just here, which is awesome. I'm not really sure why it exists. It's been a bug in 3 Studio Max for a while. I say it's a bug. I feel like if it was a bug they would have fixed it, but it still exists. So when you use these projection methods over here, this often freezes on you. You can't interact with anything. The simple solution how to resolve that is just to come down and choose a different selection method by doing that, and then go back in, and that will be fine. If you need to interact with any of this. We actually don't need to interact with any of this, it's all fine, but just worth letting you guys know how you change that if you need to. Okay, so we've got, if I draw a selection around that part there, you can see solid aspects there. Because I'm doing this in a very simple way, I'm quite happy just because all six faces are exactly the same in terms of their dimensions. I'm happy for them all to occupy the same space here. That means that when we put it through to Quixel, it means that anything we do to this face will also be affected on all the different faces because they're overlapping, of course. Which, if you don't want that, then of course you need to separate these out into their own individual UV islands for each of the 6 faces. But as I keep saying, because this is just an introductory beginning tutorial on Quixel, we're just going to keep it nice and simple. So now that I've got that in place, I'm just going to go up to Tools and Render UVW Template, and I'm just going to change this to 2048. You wouldn't use 2K UV maps on something as simple as this in an environment, but just to kind of show you the detail that we can get in these things, it's quite nice to do that. So I'm putting up to 2K. I will then change mode to solid, untick show overlapped. We don't need to see the seam edges, but we will use the visible edges in Photoshop to help us differentiate the different sections. So I'll click Render UV Template, and this should give you an image like this. Just click on the save icon in the top left corner, and then what we'll do is we will go down to where we're going to save our stuff. So I've got a tutorials for the setup assets. I'm just going to call this one create folder. Yeah, going there, and then I'll call this create_UVW, and I'll save that as a PNG file. Save. Click OK. Awesome. Now we can close that down, and close that down, and close that down. And we want the model to remember the UV information. So this process is called baking. So we bake the UV information into the model so it remembers where we've assigned it to exist. So I'll click on Collapse All on the Unwrap UVW. So I'll right click on Unwrap UVW and click Collapse All. It'll give me a warning and say, "Are you sure you want to do this?" And click yes. And now it's been baked in, which is wonderful. You can just add another Unwrap UVW. I'll add an Unwrap UVW just to show you that this has remembered the information just by. There you go. So it's remembered it because we baked it in there. So I'll go ahead and delete that. You don't need to do that yourselves. I'm just showing you that that proves that it's been baked onto it. So we'll go to File and Export. Export again. I'll go to my folder again, so Assets and Create. And the default file type is always going to be FBX. FBX is a great container file. It's very rare that we're using anything different from that, so we'll call this just Create. Save. Make sure smooth groups are ticked and preserve vegetation are on. Don't need to worry about animation. And it's always a good idea to check as well that you're using FBX file format 2014 to 15, just because Unreal likes that file format, and so does Quixel. I'm sure it's possible to update it to a later version. It's just sometimes it can be a little bit funny, so I just, if it ain't broke, don't fix it sort of type thing. So yeah, click OK. And then we're finished now with 3ds Studio Max, so we can go over to Photoshop and we'll click on Open. And what we will do is we will find our texture. So we'll go to where I put it, or wherever you put it. And sorry, I said texture, I meant to say we will look for our UVW map, I should say. Click Open. And in here, what we need to do is we just need to basically paint different sections. So the way that Quixel works is that it will apply different textures to different parts of the model based on what colors we've assigned to it, which is really useful. So I will choose the paint bucket tool. You might have to click and hold because by default the gradient tool is visible, so you might have to just click and hold and change that to the paint bucket tool. I'm just going to choose like a red color. Doesn't matter what color you use. So I'm going to click a couple of times, because what this does is it enlarges the space a little bit. Probably not the technical term for that, but essentially what we're using it for is getting rid of the white lines, the seam edges that we left, that we wanted to come into Photoshop so that we could use it to differentiate the different sections of what we wanted. So I'll change this now to a bluey color, and then I'll click on here, click a couple of times, click a couple of times, click a couple of times, click a couple of times. I just really want to make sure that we get rid of those white lines, and it does look like it's gone, which is awesome. So now that's been done, we can just go to Save As, and I always like to save it as like version 2, so just put 2 at the end of it. It's probably unnecessary because it wasn't that difficult to export that out, but I do it anyway. Click Save, and then we can confirm OK on that one, and then we'll just close that down. Yeah, that's fine. We need to save, so we saved that before. So now what we'll do is we'll open up Quixel, and this is one of those error messages that I was telling you about that will come up. We'll just click yes, and this is the little menu that we have associated with Quixel. So we'll click on the icon that has a D over it. It stands for Dido. Click on that, and that will open up a menu for you. And the first thing we're going to plug into here is our mesh. So we will go to allocation and grab the mesh. And what I'll do, as soon as you've done that, it will generate down here, it will fill this in and go save in, and it will basically, it creates a project file for you that will have all your assets in, that you'll be able to load your project from up later if it crashed, or if you saved it and wanted to come in and make some changes or anything like that. And this will also be the location where any exported textures will go to as well. We can change this if you're not happy with this location. This is going to, but I'm fine with this location, so I'm going to keep it there. So there's the mesh. We'll bring in the material ID now, and there it is. So we'll click on that. We've not created a normal map for this, or an ambient inclusion map for this. We're going to use Quixel to do that for us, and all the rest of the settings are fine. By default, the default option is specular PBR. Because we're using Unreal, Unreal supports a metalness workflow rather than a specular workflow. So we're going to use, we could just come down and choose one of these different ones, but because we're never going to put it into Unreal, we're going to use the UE4 one, and I'm going to use the UE4 RMA packed one as well, and I'll explain to you why that's really useful in terms of pipeline, in terms of your processes, and in terms of sort of saving space when we get onto that stage. So I'll click that, and that all looks fine. So I'll go ahead and click on Create. I'll just let it do its thing. Cool. Okay, so now we just go and click on where it says Let's Get Started. And what I like to do is I like to click on the icon that says 3 on it, which stands for Frito. So I've just full screen it there. You don't have to, of course. You can just leave it like that if you wanted to. But as you can see, this is our cube. So just some navigation information for you. We can use the scroll wheel on the mouse to sort of zoom in and out. You can also hold down the middle mouse button to pan around then with the object. And if you hold down Alt and left click, you can then spin or orbit or pivot, whatever you want to call it, around the object, and you can see it has a light source coming from behind it as well, which is why as we turn it, it looks like it's changing colour. One of the things I like to do is I like to drop down in post-process and change from the drop down here to Unreal Engine, just to give us an idea of how that might look in terms of Unreal. I mean, it might be redundant. It depends on how you set up like your scenes and stuff inside Unreal, I suppose. So that image you see there is a HDRI image, and it's essentially light is being emitted from that image in terms of how that impacts on our object here, which is why if I turn that around, we can see the different light different ways. If you hold down Shift and right click on the mouse, I guess what you're doing is you're pivoting, or you're rotating, sorry, the actual image behind it now, because you can see obviously it's changing the way that the light is impacting on the object again. So there's a couple of different things that you can do in terms of moving around the object, and we can also just turn the light up there a little bit too if that's a little bit too dark for you. Okay, so if I hold down Shift and C on the keyboard, you'll see that it gives you a preview of how the material ID is being applied to the object based on the UV. So obviously we've exported the UV from FreeScreen Max with this information. We then coloured it in a Photoshop, and it's showing up in this way, which is kind of cool. Just also worth noting as well that if you've clicked out of here, if you've clicked over here and then press Shift C, it doesn't work. You have to make sure you've clicked on the window. So with that held down, if we click on the colour, so if we click on the red first, this will open up the materials. But let us move down to the wood section, and I'm just going to use the very simple worn bare wood. So yeah, it's selected because you can see it's got the bits around it, the selection points, and then go ahead and click on Create. So just need to let it do its thing and process it, understand how to apply that to the object. And there we go. You can see it's been added to just that particular section. I'm just going to rotate the view around so you can see how that looks in the light in different ways. Wonderful. It's a little bit dark. I want to make it like a little bit brighter. So over in here, these layers work very similar to layers in Photoshop. They have the same hierarchy. So what's on top will be shown first. And here to the left of it, you've got the masks, or as they're called in Quixel, Dynamasks. So obviously with that being completely black, there is no cavity dirt at all. So actually that layer there isn't doing anything. Now the way that works is that actually if the model has enough information, has enough kind of like changes in its kind of its shape or whatever, then cavity dirt might be applied. So it's trying to be clever. Quixel's trying to be clever about how it's applying it to it. So that's not a redundant layer that always gets added. It's just redundant in this case because of the shape because of the type of thing that we've made in here. So we can actually just we can right click on that and we can just delete that particular layer because it's not doing anything for us. And you'll see that that's not making any difference whatsoever. What is making a difference is this edgeware one here. If I just hide that by clicking on this one just here, you can see that that makes a little bit of an impact. And that might be more of what you're going for. You might prefer the look of that, and if that's the case, then that's fine. But I'm going to leave that on there. So as you can see, parts of that edgeware are being applied through this mask just here. And then down here we've got that wood base showing in complete white on the Dynamask, which means of course that the whole thing is visible. So masks or Dynamasks are used heavily in Quixel to help the user and to help the model appear in the way that it needs to appear, or the person that's making it wants it to appear, I should say. So we'll click on the wood base, we get that error message again, click yes. I'm just going to make it a little bit lighter. Click yes again. And it will update, and is that too much? Or is that okay? I think that will be okay, yeah, that's fine. Alright, so that's kind of how we apply basic materials in Quixel. It's worth noting that we have different tabs up here. These different tabs are representative of the different texture maps that will be exported out from Quixel. And what's allowed these to be specified is that we've chosen that UE4 RMA packed option. So these are the maps that will be exported as part of that export map option that we chose at the very beginning with when we're on the Dido menu. So it's worth noting that you can go into metalness, and if you wanted to, we're selecting the wood base layer. At the moment, obviously, the metalness is turned all the way down. It's not showing, so we will, if we turn it all the way up there, and then go to roughness, and turn the roughness, which is kind of combating against the metalness, turn it all the way down there. And if I just turn this around so that we can see that a bit better, you can see that it starts to add a little bit of a shine to it. And again, that might be the effect that you're going for, if that's what you wanted to do. But I suppose it kind of adds almost like a varnish sort of type effect to it. So again, you can play around with those options, and that's useful to know how to do that. For the wood that we're going for, I'm just going to leave it as it was before, so I'm going to turn the roughness back up, and I'm going to turn the metalness down, all the way down. Wicked. I just want the wood to look rough around the edges. Okay. In albedo, it's also, in normal maps here, I should also mention that we have the normal map is, if you're not aware, it's kind of what's allowing the illusion of depth, the detail in there that's been created through texture maps. Like if I move the screen out of the way, you can see that is the texture map that's being created. You can see the detail that's applying to it, and when we apply that to the 3D model, it creates the illusion of detail and depth doing that, which is nice, which is what's giving it that kind of woody looking texture. So yeah, and we can change the intensity of that by moving that slider up so we can make it look more intense, or we can make it less intense, like so. So I'll just move it back to roughly what it was before. We can also, it's worth, so albedo and normal are they're connected to each other essentially, which is why if I change the scale of the albedo map just here by putting that up like something like 2, so changing the scale of the texture, it gets much bigger. The quality of it has been diminished somewhat now because we're zooming in to the texture that's being applied to this space on the object. And similarly, if I go -2, you'll see that it has this kind of repeating pattern going across it. So you can't see it too badly actually at that point, which is quite cool. But there's repeats just here in the wood, because these are obviously using seamless textures to as a base, as a foundation, to then pull this into Quixel. Okay, so I'll put that back up to 0 again, just so it's back to where it was before. Great stuff. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back. So I'm going to add another material now, and if I added a material whilst I was in this view, in fact what I'll do is I'll just show you. I hold down Shift and C and click on the blue, and I'll go to the wood again, and I'm going to choose one of the, I'll choose Flaked Painted Wood Red. There we go. Click Create, Now, fortunately, it comes up with this message that says, do you want to add this material inside the currently selected group? You don't want to do that. It just creates all kinds of like complications, and it makes it quite difficult to get Quixel to do what you want it to do in terms of applying things if you want to make any changes. So always go back, always click on the back arrows to make sure it's added at the very start of it, so that each material is set up separately. So if I click back here, you'll see what I mean. So we've got the worn bare wood applied to the red part of our material ID, and then we've got the this flaked painted one added to the blue, which is this outside part here. If I press Shift and C, you can see what I'm talking about there. So those are the different parts that are related to it. And then to go into it, we just click on that just there, and then you can see what the different maps. Cool. So we've got the wood base again. We've got this paint on top of it, some discoloration, which again, given from the fact that the Dynamask is completely black, again because of the shape of what we've got, that's not been applied, but there is a little bit of dirt being applied there as well on top of it, which we can turn off if we wanted to. Not really have a massive impact, so yeah, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete that. And then discoloration, just going to turn it off, see if that does make any kind of impact. I don't think it will, because yeah, again, so I'm just going to delete that. It's a good idea, I think, in principle, to delete layers that we don't need, just because I'm mindful that that's going to take up more space when you export these maps and it compresses all this data together. It's going to take up more space because of that. So if you don't need it, I think we just get rid of it personally. So with the paint layer, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to turn the metalness up. So it's important that I have got the paint layer selected, not the wood base, because obviously then this is just being applied to that. So I'm just going to make I want that to look a little bit more shiny. Roughness, pull that down a little bit. And let's just have a look, see how that looks. Just going to zoom in here a little bit. Great, so not too intense, but just as you would expect, paint is a little bit shiny. Wonderful. Okay. So I'll go back to the albedo. And what I'm going to do this time is I'm not too. It looks okay. I'm not trying to like diss the person that made this, but I'm just going to add a little bit myself, and in doing so, show you a little bit more of the power that Quixel has in terms of what we can do on textures. So with the paint layer selected, I'm actually going to click on Edit Dynamask. In fact, sorry, no, before I do that, I'm going to change the colour of the wood base. Ideally, I could have copied the hexadecimal reference or the RGB values from when I applied the colour to this wood just here, if I was being super on it, but I'm just kind of running through this in a very basic way. So, but by all means, if you want to make sure it's the same colour, exactly the same kind of colour from there as it was for this bit of the wood down here, feel free to do so. So yeah, I've changed that wooden base, and you can see that coming through underneath the paint now. So now I'll click on this Dynamask, and it gives you the option, would you like to do it in full shaded mode? If you click no for quick editing, that basically just gives you a 3D view of essentially black and white. I think like when you hold down Alt on the keyboard in Photoshop and click the mask, I think it gives you that option as well. I think it's Alt that you hold down. That basically does it in here if you click on no, but in a 3D view. But I want to see how this is applying to itself to it, so I'm going to click on yes. I think the reason they give you the option is because this is computationally more expensive, so it's possible that your graphics card might not be able to handle it. So I have just accidentally clicked and created some changes there. I'm going to resolve those in a bit after I show you bits over here. So let's pull this up over here. So we've got a bunch of presets that we can use here. So for example, we could try, let's see what edge cracked pane looks like. Okay, so we can see little bits here and there, not too much though. We could always try inverting the mask as well. In fact, sorry, I think it was already set to invert from the last time it was on here, which is why it's taken out now. So there's going to be some presets that just don't work very well at all because of, again, it's all to do with the shapes, all to do with like the actual geometry of the model you have in the first place. So some things are going to work better than others. Let's try this one, see if this works a bit better. Not a great deal. By all means, if you can find something that works and saves yourself some time, fantastic. Let's try flake paint heavy. That must have some kind of effect, surely. That looks very similar to what we basically had in the first place. And again, we can invert that if we wanted to, so it does it the other way around, just it's less. So like that. Yeah, okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of show you how you can go in and manually edit this yourself. So I will click on the white mask just up here so that we get a fresh palette. apart from those areas that I accidentally went over earlier. So over at the top here, you've got your painting options. So you've got your brush type, and you've got your brush or your raise, the opacity of your brush, and whether you're going to be painting in black or white, essentially. So if I go to white and go over these areas, you can see that's covered. So what I'll do is I'm going to click on the brush, and I'm going to change the brush type. So you've got lots of different brushes that you can play around with. Click on the brush, and I would choose something simple like this one, and then you can see from the spacing what that's doing. Obviously, depending on what kind of effect you're going to go for, you can be clicking, or you can be clicking and dragging. I just prefer to click for what I'm doing, so it's why it's always useful to open the spacing out so you can see what's going to happen if you just click in that space. So with that brush selected, I'm just going to click on the brush again, and I'm going to turn the paint opacity all the way up. In fact, no, I'll turn it down a little bit, and then I need to bring this all the way down because I'm obviously taking away and removing from this paint. And then let's just see how that looks. So if I click there, just gives me a little bit of detail. I'm going to use the shortcut, the square brackets as well, which is a shortcut in Photoshop for enlarging and reducing the size of the brush. So just got some detail there. And also bear in mind that where we're clicking like this, it's going to come through like here as well, because all faces are occupying the same space. Might be worthwhile rotating the brush around as well. Just so we get some marks going up like that, and yeah, we can change the opacity of this so that we get a different kind of effect. We can change the different types of brushes that we've got. So yeah, it's nice. And it's really kind of useful that we have this functionality. Also, just going to show you the option I was talking about earlier in terms of if you would click no on something. Sorry, if you click no on the part where it asks you if you want to go into full edit mode or quick edit. This will basically is what it will show you in quick edit, and it's also it doesn't matter because it only matters what's on these edges. But you can see I've also somehow clicked in the middle here, just because I have maybe a little bit of OCD. I'm gonna just come in there and cover those up. Like there's literally no reason for me to do that in theory because it's not impacting on those areas. It's only impacting on the edges because that's where the mask is for, but I'll do it anyway. Okay, so once you're happy with what you've got there, the scuffs, the detail on there, you can then go to Accept Mask, and that will apply that to your model, and we are pretty much there, guys. I suppose the only thing I just wanted to show you quickly in passing is that if we wanted to, for some strange reason, I mean we probably wouldn't do it now because we've obviously added the detail, but if we wanted to, if we decided that, oh, we made a mistake, we've got the materials the long way around, or we just wanted to see what they look like in reverse order, we can actually click on these and change the colour. So I can change that to red. Try that again. So change that to red, there we go. And then I can change that one to blue, if that is what you want on your box. That could work just as well, I guess. Okay, but I'm just going to revert it back to how it was before. Awesome. Okay, so that's all fine. So I can just close this down now, as I don't need those options anymore. And I'm going to go back at the top, like I've done. Yep, so at the top there, and then at the top, just here, you've got the option where it says click on Open the Exporter. Now this, I explained before when we were adding the mesh and the material ID map to Dido, that there at the bottom there it generated a location for where the project files will be saved. So in here, when it comes up and says /flats, it's basically creating a new folder for you in that section. We can change the name in there if you wanted to. That's pulled it directly through from, even though we called the model crate when we exported it inside 3D Studio Max. In fact, it's probably still open here, I think, but inside 3D Studio Max it's still called box 001. So it's reading that information, which is why it's sitting there, box 001. So I've just changed that to crate, and it's .png file. I've changed it to 16-bit in terms of the output, just so there's a little bit more detail, and you can see the export target is still set to UE4. Interestingly, you can still change it at this point. So I'll click on Export All Materials, and that's all fine. So close that down, go ahead and close that down. It will prompt and say, do you want to save before? By all means, click yes if you wanted to. And what we'll do is we'll go over to Unreal. So I've just created a blank level in here. What I've done is there's no starter content, it's third person template, it's a new level. I'll just be probably using this for all the Quixel videos, all the Quixel series videos that I do. What I've also done, it's worth noting, just because we're outside, if you like, I've deleted the sphere reflection just because it doesn't really do that much if it's an external level. And I've also added a post-process volume where I've adjusted the min and max brightness just to stay 2 so it's consistent. That's simply because if you have the min and max equaling each other, there's no eye adaptation going on in a level. And also it's worth going to show and post-processing, and I'm ticking it there as well. So this part here impacts when you're in the editor view, and then if you hit play, the post-process volume I've added to it, this comes into play now. If you don't have that, I just find it a little bit annoying where the light levels change as you look around the scene. Okay, so I'm just going to right click and create a new folder and call it create, or is that create? I'll try that again, create, double click on that, and then I'll go to import, and I just need to navigate to where my textures come out. So if I go to tutorials and assets and create, you see in here that it's created a project folder just there, and this has got all of the PSD information that's related to the actual project, but where it's been compressed and flattened down, hence the name flats, is in here. And rather usefully, it's also exported the model into this section here for me as well, so I can just press Ctrl A and I don't have to navigate to where the model is elsewhere, which is useful. So click import all. So just click Save All to make sure they've all been saved to projects. They've all got the stars there, so they've never been saved yet. Then I'll right click on Albedo and click on Create Material. Hit once, hit Enter to confirm. You might want to change your naming conventions. This obviously says create underscore albedo underscore map. You might just want to change it to say create underscore m or m underscore create, whatever you prefer. I'm just going to stick to this because it's a little bit easier for what I'm doing today. So I'll double click to open that up. It keeps opening up on the other screen, sorry. And what I'll do is I just need to drag in my other 2 maps just here, and then I'll dock that at the top like I would with Google Chrome or something. So we've got our material node, which, because we right clicked on our video and said create material, it's automatically plugged that into base color for us, which is useful. And then we've got our normal map just here, as you can see that's the name convention just there. So create normal just there. Now this obviously is what I was talking about earlier in terms of the RMA stuff. So RMA basically refers to roughness, metallic and ambient occlusion. So in order to support this pipeline, in order to support the Metalness PBR pipeline workflow, we have certain texture maps, and that would normally involve an albedo map, which contains the detail. It contains a normal map that we obviously plug in that creates the illusion of depth, and then we have a roughness map, a metallic map, and an ambient occlusion map. These two working in combination with each other to sort of demonstrate, to represent how shiny or how metallic something does look, and ambient occlusion representing the light, or how the object reacts to light around it. But Quixel have found a really cool way to make it so that these are all compressed into one texture, and that's really useful because that means less textures in Unreal, which means taking up less space. Less space means project isn't as big, and therefore it's more efficient and it's better than for making video games with. The RMA relates to the RGB, so instead of RGB, it's roughness, metallic, ambient occlusion, RMA. So we plug the roughness in, we plug the metallic in, and we plug the ambient occlusion in, okay, just like so. And then we've got it how we want it. So we'll click Save, we'll close it down. What we need to do now is we just need to apply that to it. So I will just double click on the model there, and I'll just drag material onto the slot just there. Click Save, and then drag this into the scene. It looks like it might be a bit too small, so I'll just make it a little bit bigger, just change the scale of it, and then click play. And there we go. There is our crate. And you can see the paint shininess is coming through there as well, which is awesome. The simple introduction on how we can set up basic materials, basic textures on models and pull them into Unreal. More videos to follow, so I will see you next time. Thanks very much for watching. Cheers, bye bye.